Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. Now, this week I came in fully prepared to talk about draft prospects for the Bills, specifically draft prospects for the Bills at pick 28 in the first round. Now that the draft is officially only 3 weeks away, I can't wait for that, and I will get to that next week now because this isn't a bad thing, but the Bills and Stefon Diggs is kind of forcing a change my plans, if you will, because if you haven't heard already, which I will, but I know I haven't given my take on it with a full-fledged podcast episode for you guys, the Buffalo Bills have traded wide receiver Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans. I'm going to talk about the official trade terms. I will give a grade for the Texans side of things. I'll give a grade for the Bills side of things, considering value, what I like, what I don't like, team complexion, wide receiver rooms for both teams now, all that. And then I have some telling stats for the end of the towards the end of the episode, I should say, that kind of can point you in the direction of why the Bills wanted to move on, among several other reasons. So let's just get into it. The official trade terms. Again, Texans get wide receiver Stefon Diggs is the main piece, but they also get a 2024 6th-round pick this year and a 2025 5th-round pick next year as well. And the Bills get a 2025 2nd-round pick, originally what the Texans got via Minnesota. Now listen, a second in 2025, bottom line, a second next year is not the best value in the world next year. I would be elated, like over the moon, even if it was a second this year, much more thrilled, I should say. And or I would even honestly, guys, take a third this year because we, the Bills, we don't have a third pick at all this year. Yes, we have picked 6th in the second round, and we have 2/4 in a bunch of surplus of day 3 picks, 10 total picks. But weirdly enough, we don't have a third round pick. So if it was a second, or like I just said, even a third this year, I'd be much more excited. And I don't really get having to send 2 more draft picks over on top of Diggs. So I don't like that. Before I kind of give my obviously this is Bills podcast. I'm a huge Bills fan, Western New Yorker, all that. I am going to give you guys kind of take off my Bills bias glasses for a few minutes here, if you will, and kind of say what I like for the Texans. And for the most part, I love it for the Texans. If I take off my bias goggles, if you will, for the Texans, I'm going to give it a solid A. The only reason why I don't give it an A plus and keep it at A, and again, not an A plus, is because I do recognize that Diggs is 30, will be 31 in November, kind of mid-season around there. So that's not ideal. And I know their wide receiver room and offense is already loaded, so you didn't necessarily need Diggs, but I'm giving it an A. He obviously wanted a Buffalo, which, again, I'll get to the Buffalo perspective in a minute, and my perspective in a minute as a Bills goggles and Bills fan here. But for the Texans, I mean, not talking about fantasy football either. This real-life offense is about to soar. CJ Stroud at quarterback. At wide receiver 1, you have Nico Collins. Wide receiver 2, Tank Dell / Stefon Diggs. And then wide receiver 3, again, Tank Dell / Stefon Diggs. And then I love their wide receiver depth after that, too. And then wide receiver 4, Noah Brown. Wide receiver 5, John Mechie. Wide receiver 6, Robert Woods / John Mechie. Like, that's 3 great starters. And at 4, 5, and 6, again, Noah Brown, John Mechie, Robert Woods. Really, really good. I predict that they're going to trade John Mechie. I just don't see how he fits. He's the wide receiver 5 and 6 at best. And then maybe the 7th option, the passing offense at best, if you even include Dalton Schultz. Just talking like a passing game weapon perspective, including tight ends and wide receivers. I wouldn't mind trading for John Mechie, like, as a Bills fan. Like, I wouldn't mind taking a swing on that. He's a vertical threat, not the best route runner. But Alabama, him and Jameson Williams were nasty. They had their own separate injuries in the national championship game a couple of years ago towards the end of the season. But John Mechie has gone through some circumstances in the NFL that has not shown us. There's been very seldom flashes here and there, 2 or 3 flashes here and there, but there's been very seldom because he had leukemia. So he had cancer / leukemia his first year in the league, which is just devastating. Then he got over it. But by that time, Nico Collins and Tank Dell in the second in the league were breaking out. So really no room for him anymore. And with Stefon Diggs, Noah Brown, and the veteran Robert Woods, if you include Dalton Schultz, if I'm the Steelers, I'm looking for him. If I'm the Bills, I'm taking a swing at the bat, if you will. Just anything. Fifth or sixth round pick, late day 3 pick, I think we'll get it done. And I'm going to give the Texans an A. And I love this roster building philosophy because unlike Panthers, with Bryce Young, the Texans are willing to go all in on CJ Stroud. Even though they have a defensive-minded coach, and DeMeco Ryans, clearly DeMeco Ryans and Nick Cassera have collaborated and said, we got to do everything for our guy. We got to do everything for CJ Stroud. Even though I'm not the biggest Joe Mixon fan in the world, I've never been the biggest Joe Mixon fan. Like, I just think he's kind of slow and not really explosive. Yeah, his stats at the end of the year are great when he was on the Bengals his whole career till obviously this upcoming season. But his game-to-game logs weren't too impressive. So I've never been the biggest Joe Mixon fan, even in his quote-unquote prime when people are all over him. But that is a part of the running game that you will have to kind of face. And who do you cover between Diggs, Collins, and Dell? Noah Brown for 2 or 3 deep shots here and there a game. So it's going to be very interesting with the target distribution. But I love the defense as well. And if they're set at defensive line with look what they did just a year ago. They had the second overall pick, traded CJ Stroud, and they went up from 11, I think it was, to all the way to 3 with the Cardinals to get Will Anderson off the edge. And they signed Danielle Hunter to, I think, was good value. What was it, like 2 years, $49 million? That's like 24.5 per year, somewhere around that range. Don't call me on that. I believe it is, though. And that's right around where I thought when Brian Burns was getting 30 from the Giants. So that's great. Maybe you could add a dude at defense line like a Jerzon Newton, although don't have a first round pick, so I don't think that's likely, or Chris Jenkins from Michigan, Devendra Sweat from, funny enough, Texas. So if you can get someone other than the top 2 guys, because I think Byron Murphy and Jerzon Newton will be well gone when you pick in the mid to late second round there, I think that all you need is defensive tackle. Yeah, you have Danico Autry. Yeah, you have Tim Settle. Yeah, you traded Malik Collins to the Bengals, so you moved out from him. So you need a dude there, an impact guy and a young impact guy. But other than that, I would say corner and defensive tackle are their needs. That's it. They got a stud quarterback. They have an absolute nuclear wide receiver / tight end room, nuclear offensive weapons. And like I said, I've never been the biggest Joe Mixon fan, never will be. Not am right now, never have been his whole career. I'm not slamming the guy, but slow and not explosive, in my opinion. But he's still a volume guy. How much he does with that volume remains to be seen. Kind of is what he is in his career. But on the defense, I already mentioned Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter off the edge. At linebacker, they got Henry To'oTo'o. We'll see. They got Dylan Horton. We'll see. But then they got Christian Harris, who looks to be a stud. Azeez Al-Shire reuniting with DeMeco Ryans from their days in San Francisco together. And if they can get maybe another linebacker to upgrade for Henry To'oTo'o, they'll be cooking. I love Jalen Petre at safety. I love Derek Stingley at corner. I love Jimmy Ward at slot corner / safety. More of a safety, though, at this point in his career. 31 years old. So I think if they get another corner and another dude, an impact young guy at defensive tackle, they'll be set. Like, this team is high flying. I think you have to consider this team with the upper echelon of the AFC. I think 4 teams in tier 1 are Chiefs, Bengals, Bills. Yes, I think they're still there. We get into that in a minute. Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, and now the Texans. I really, really do. I mean, going from 1-year head coach cycle through like David Culley, 1 year and you're David Culley, 1 year and you're out. Levy Smith, 1 year and you're out. And finally, guys like 1 year, $2, $3, $4 million deals, and like there's all these random players not going all in on free agency ever, not going all in on the draft ever. It's all amounted to this for the Texans. I love where they're going. Bills, let's get into the Bills side of things, though, and there is a lot to unpack here. I'll say the grade. I'm going to go into my reasoning. Baseline grade, I give it a C. Listen, I don't think they got good value for Stefon Diggs because obviously this is not the Stefon Diggs of old when the Bills traded for him 4 years ago from the Vikings. So a second next year, like I said, I'd be elated with a second this year, even a third this year because we don't have a third currently. So that would be great. That would be great, but I'm going to give it a C because the value. But the good part of it is, and this is where I go into my kind of main talking point, the fact the Bills were willing to only, I don't know if like they were kind of giving in or accepting, but the fact that the Bills only were willing to accept getting only a second round pick next year in 2025, and judging from the fact that they're willing to eat $31 million in dead cap, signals to me that Stefon Diggs asked for a trade. He requested for a trade. Now, I'm sure that he didn't request a trade just yesterday when the trade actually went down yesterday morning. I'm sure they knew this was coming for a week or a few weeks now, 2 or 3 weeks. By the way, Brandon Beane was asking, he had a press conference at One Bills Drive yesterday, a few hours after it happened. I think the trade happened at like 11 a.m. and he had it like 4 p.m., like a half-hour press conference. And he said teams have approached us before about wanting Stefon Diggs, and we didn't feel it was the right time even before the year. So, and he said, I didn't tell Josh Allen, like warn Josh Allen directly because he was in the West Coast and probably still sleeping, he said, because he goes back to California every offseason, but to train, recover, rest, whatever. He didn't tell him directly before the trade happened, but he said, hey, teams are kicking the tires in the skies and we're willing to talk. So I thought that was interesting. So I don't think the Bills, though, went into this offseason, saying we're going to trade Stefon Diggs. A Diggs trade is coming. Because if that was the case, they would have done it before the league year. It would have helped their cap for 2025. It would have said, hey, this is what we're going to do in free agency. This is what we're going to do in the draft. And we have this opening. We got to check this box, and this box. Instead, they had to wait a few weeks. So this was not their intention going into the offseason. But I think, again, judging from the fact that the draft capital they got, if you want to even call it that, was a second next year in 2025. Although that could be a pretty good pick now that I think about it, because the Vikings will have Sam Darnold or a rookie starting, probably Sam Darnold, like JJ McCarthy, which trading up for, which it's been well documented on this podcast and my Twitter and whatnot. If you talked to me before at all, online or in person or wherever, I'm not the biggest JJ McCarthy fan. I wouldn't even say I'm a fan at all. Like, I think he's kind of overrated. Sure, return to school. I think he's a lot overrated, actually. So, but judging from the fact that they were willing to take on $31 million in dead cap, I think everyone was ready to move on. I think it reached a boiling point. Now, I don't think this was like the final straw, and I don't think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott said this and like we're trading in based off of this one thing. But if you guys saw this, if not, I'll go through it quick. Last night, so Wednesday, April 3rd. So last night, RG3, Robert Griffin III, RG3, who now works at ESPN for a number of years now since he blew out his knee with Washington, his rookie year in the NFL. He was saying on his podcast and tweeted out, is Stefon Diggs essential to Josh Allen's success? And I can't remember the name of the fan. Sorry, but the fan replied to that and said, is Stefon Diggs a Pro Bowler? Is Stefon Diggs an all-pro level player, first caliber players, first couple years in Buffalo? Yes. But is he essential to Josh Allen's success? At this point, no. And then Diggs responded, you sure? With a question mark. I'm not saying that McDermott and more Beane mainly saw that and said, yeah, you're out of here. I think it was building up to that point. The main point I'm trying to make here is, I know I keep saying 31 million dead cap, but the fact that they're willing to take that on for this year signals to me that like they didn't care. Like they didn't want to have this guy in the locker room anymore. He clearly didn't fit the McDermott mold anymore, the McDermott way, if you will. Stuff like this in Buffalo never happens. It really never gets out. Let's think back to Stefon Diggs. The first 2 years in Buffalo, it was all sunshine and rainbows. People were all cheering, Stefon Diggs this, Stefon Diggs that, making all sorts of mega plays. I mean, heck, even what was it? A couple of years ago, Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs were on the cover of Sports Illustrated Kids together as like depicted the bestest of friends. And, at the end of that year, though, so that was the summer before the 2022 season. And then at the end of that year, your lasting image is Stefon Diggs on the sideline yelling at Josh Allen with palms to the air, like, what are you doing? And Josh Allen totally disregarding him and looking dejected, mind you. because he wasn't playing well, but totally disregarding him and not listening to him at all. So that whole offseason was like, well, Stefon Diggs in Paris. Well, Stefon Diggs is not voluntary OTAs, blah, blah, blah. And then the next month in June, when mandatory minicamp is held every year, he's not there the first day. And then McDermott comes out and says, he's asked, what do you think about Stefon Diggs? Are you concerned? This and that. And he says, yeah, I'm very concerned. And then people are freaking out. And then just a few hours later, that same day, McDermott comes back and kind of like walks back his statement, walks back his concern. And then the first day of training camp, a month or so later, in July, the first day of training camp, Diggs kind of speaks in a press conference and says, like, I'm good. My relationship with Josh Allen is good, and this and that. And then 5 of the first 6 games in 2023, so this is just last season, 5 of the 6 games, he has 100-yard games in the first 6. So basically every Sunday, the guy's waking up and having 100 yards and a touchdown. Even the Miami game in week 4, he had 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then after that, like, put it candidly, the wheels fell off. He didn't have a single 100-yard game after that. And I don't think he had I only think he had one game second half of the season over 50 yards. That's it. So I think a mixture of thinking like, hey, this is unfortunate, but this is how Diggs is going to be basically the rest of his career. And I kind of like, if this is a sign for things to come, it's best to move on now. And you don't want the guy being miserable in your locker room your whole career and bringing other guys down. And I think there was an element of, like, let's not make Josh Allen go through this anymore. Because if you remember at mandatory minicamp, if you remember at training camp, even in season press conference, he was constantly being asked, what's your relationship with Diggs? What's your relationship with Steph? And he always had to say, me and Steph and I are good. Steph and I are good. And I think Bean and McDermott not felt bad for him, but like, you didn't want to put Josh Allen through that anymore. I mean, you can't ask him questions if every question is about Diggs. And whether it was Diggs and Allen's relationship, whether it was Allen and McDermott slash Bean, Diggs and McDermott slash Bean's relationship, or just Diggs and the organization as a whole with some other players, or like I just said, the organization as a whole, whatever it was, we'll never know. And I don't understand why Diggs keeps doing this. I don't want to be like negative or whatever, but I don't understand why Diggs keeps doing this. He forced his way out of Minnesota, I guess. I'll go as far as say he forced his way out of Minnesota because he thought Adam Thielen was the number one, which is just crazy to look back on today because I think Diggs was clearly the number one there. Even when Thielen and him were both at, mainly Thielen was in his prime. But, like, I don't know what there's to claim. You're playing with Josh Allen. Like, other than Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to find a better situation. And arguably right up there, I think him and Mahomes are on the same tier. And you, over the last 4 years, Diggs had the most targets in the NFL. So usually receivers are put on that diva label because they complain and moan when they're not getting the ball and not getting targets. Well, that's not true. Like I just said, or most targets in the NFL over the last 4 years. So I don't know what else the guy wants. And he's putting up over 1,200 yards every year. And he's putting up over 100 catches every year with like 130, 140, 100, pushing 150 targets. And like I said earlier, he was well on his way to the best season of his career, but the second half of the season, wheels fall off. And I don't think it was just a shift from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady thing. I honestly think he wasn't able to win. You could see it in the film. You could see it even during the game, going back to all 22, multiple podcasts breaking down the film. What I saw with my own eyes, other people in family discussions, friend groups, circles, whatever. He couldn't win downfield anymore. He was never a high-end athlete, or I wouldn't call him like a burner, no way close to Tyreek Hill, but like he used to be able to win vertically with ease, separation with ease. And yes, he's still a route technician, and I think he's best in the slot now because he can't really win downfield. I think now in Houston, Nico Collins is your big downfield threat slot guy. Tank Dell's your big yak, yards after catch, run after catch, guy. Shifty guy, do everything. And Diggs, I think you can line up in the slot team, him and Tank Dell, because Diggs can be your route technician and chain mover and get you easy layups, easy buckets, if you will, to get easy first downs. Because really, that's kind of why I think the Bills saw the writing on the wall between all the drama, between all the tweets, and also just in drop off of play. Like, he had an awful last 12 games of the season. I'm going to kind of say some stats here to illuminate that. Stefon Diggs over the last 12 games of the 2023 season for the Buffalo Bills, these are baffling. 71 targets, 42 receptions. That's a 59.2 reception percentage. That's awful. Anything below 70 is awful. 75, 388 yards, 2 touchdowns, 12.5 drop percentage, 77.7 passer rating when targeted. So when Josh Allen targeted Stefon Diggs, he had a 77.7 passer rating. That's not helping your quarterback if you're dropping passes again. The thing that sticks out to me there is that's a 59.2 reception percentage. That's awful. Over the last, he still had the most targets on the whole team of any weapon over the last 12 games of the season. But the last 12 games of the season, during the span, Khalil Shakir led the team in receiving yards. Dalton Kincaid led the team in actual receptions. He wasn't doing anything. Like, it wasn't just bad. It was awful. The wheels fell off. And to illuminate this even more, Stefon Diggs over the last 3 playoff elimination games for the Bills. So the Bills, that's the last 3 years in a row. 2023 versus Chiefs. 8 targets, only 3 receptions for 21 yards. Okay. And in that game, I mean, it was awful. I don't think it was the very first play of the game. It might have been the very first drive of the game for the Bills. Fenda catches the ball. Little screen pass, I think it was. Then he fumbles it. Thank God for Dalton Kincaid to have, the wherewithal, the headiness, whatever you want to call it, heads up play to knock out of balance. And then later in the game, he middle of the game, he drops a pass. And then the lasting image, his very last play as a Buffalo Bill on the Bills, he drops a 75-yard bomb that is a game-changing play, perfectly placed by Josh Allen. He got tons of separation from the DB. What does he do? It goes right through his hands. It didn't even bobble off his hands. It just went right off through his hands, right through his gloves, if you will. So, yeah, in that game, 3 catches and 8 targets for 21 yards only. 2022 versus Bengals. The game where his palms in the air and yelling at Josh Allen on the side, and Josh Allen's totally ignoring him and checked out. 4 receptions and only 10 targets. That's a 40% reception percentage / catch. What even is that? And then 35 yards. Come on. And then this one, I mean, this is going to make you sick here. 2021 versus Chiefs. The dreaded 13 seconds. That's all I'll say about that. 3 receptions, only 6 targets. So once again, only a 50% reception percentage. 7 yards on 3 catches on 6 targets. 7. So let me do quick math. In the last 3 playoff elimination games, Stefon Diggs has 10 catches. 10 catches on 24 targets for a grand total of 63 yards. 10 catches on 24 targets for 63 yards, not a single touchdown. Are you kidding? That's like a single game stat line just without the touchdown. 63 yards between the 3 elimination things. Come on. So that's why I give the Bills a C, but I don't understand what Stefon Diggs had to complain about in Houston. He's not going to get near the targets he got in Buffalo because you're going to fight with Nico Collins for that. Tanked out high-volume guy when he was healthy. Boy broke his foot. Fibula, whatever. Dalton Schultz, he's handsomely played tight end, like top 10 paid tight end in the league in terms of pure money. $12 million per year. Joe Mixon, never been a big fan. I'll keep saying that. But they're going to run a lot with him. He's a volume guy. He can't really catch the ball in the backfield, though. He's a volume guy. And then Noah Brown. C.J. Stroud is a damn good situation to go to, and I love the kid. I love the guy, But, I don't understand. I think it's fair to say he forced his way out. And yes, if he asked for a trade, the Bills could have said, well, too bad. You'll have to deal with it because we're not doing that. We're not trading you. But I think the Bills will never say that, exactly. But I think Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, the Bills, and Josh Allen, maybe even to an extent, again, he'll never admit it or anybody, we're ready to move on. I think Josh Allen was thinking, I can't keep doing this in press conferences, man. I just want to focus and without the Diggs distraction. And then Beane and McDermott are like, we can't have this in our locker room. We can't have this on the field with these actions. If he's just going to be miserable all year, which he has no reason to be, if he's miserable all year, then we got to move him now. Like, it's just not going to happen. I mean, and just purely on the field of play, I just said those stats, you guys, to illuminate how he's lost some vertical, not some, like almost all of his vertical down the field separation ability. Then yeah, and now I'm wondering. Here's the big part, because the so I'll give the Bills to see after that whole thing conversation. The Bills' current wide receiver players the Bills have moved on from this offseason. First, there's clearly like an intentionality with this. And there's clearly like Brandon Beane knows what he's doing. But moved on from Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, Mitch Morse, Gabe Davis, Tyrell Dotson, and Leonard Floyd, with those first 3 or 4 being cuts. I'm not really upset about Gabe Davis, but the fact remains that between Stefon Diggs, Gabe Davis, that's over 200 targets and over 1,600 yards, over 1,600 yards leaving your huddle, leaving your offense. So you're going to have to replenish here, because wide receivers currently on the Bills roster, this is not very encouraging, but Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins, Justin Shorter, KJ Hamler, Andy Isabella, Brian Thompson, Tyler Shavers. Brian Thompson, Tyler Shavers, practice guys. Probably Andy Isabella too. And then KJ Hamler, wide receiver 5-6 type, I think, in my opinion. Shorter too. Hollins is a perfect wide receiver 4. Just a much better version of Trent Sherfield, in my opinion. I'm really excited about Samuel and Shakir. So in the draft at 28, I want to get a downfield separator. And I think if you want to trade up for a true alpha, I don't think you can trade up from Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. Generational kid, prospect. Malik Neighbors, close to him as well. Maybe not generational, but like close, very close. True alpha. Those guys are like top 6 or top 7 at the least picks. Where I look is the Falcons at 8 and the Chicago Bears, Atlanta Falcons at 8 and Chicago Bears at 9. But if you want to move up all the way, let's say from 28 to 9, then you're going to have to give up 28 this year, a first round pick next year. So a 2028 this year, a 2025 first, and probably a next year second, the earlier one. I don't know if I'm willing to do that. I was considering even when Diggs was on the roster, but now I think it's a must, but I don't know personally if I'm willing to do that. Maybe if you're okay with Brian Thomas Jr. getting the consensus wide receiver 4 off the board in the mid-teens, then maybe you do that. But I'm not quite sure if I'm willing to give up 28, a first next year and a second next year to get like all the way from 28 to 9 to draft Rome Odunze. Because Rome Odunze would be perfect in offense. His best ability is to contest the catch, obviously, but I think the comp of Keenan Allen would work very, very well. Amazing route runner, not the most athletic guy in the world. He's not elite other than contested catch situations, but I think if Marvin Harrison Jr., I think all those guys, top 3, can be alphas. Harrison, Neighbors, Rome Odunze from Washington, who we're talking about, as maybe Bills trading up. That's like 20 spots you would have to trade up for. So the ripple effect is massive of trading Diggs. Like I said, I only like the receivers that I think can have big production currently in the wide receiver room for us right now are Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. So that's kind of where my head's at with that. But what I would do personally, like I know Rome Odunze is a dog, and I know Rome Odunze, this and that. But I would rather trade for a T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk, because you wouldn't have to give up a next year first, in my opinion. That would be an overpay if you did have to. I've seen some rumors float out there yesterday. Not rumors, actually, but like trade packages, hypothetically, like giving up 28 and a fourth this year for Brandon Ayuk to the 49ers. Oh, give me that in a heartbeat. I'll do that in a heartbeat. I don't care about a fourth round pick. This isn't some rebuilding team or like in some limbo with rebuilding / contention window. No. And I would give up 28 and a fourth round pick this year for Brandon Ayuk in a heartbeat. He can do everything. I think he's a fantastic, absolute elite route runner. I think he's more talented than Deebo Samuel. I think the 49ers will end up trading Deebo or Ayuk. I just don't think they'll keep both of them for next season. So that shoe could drop, if you will, at any time now, maybe during the draft. It's going to have to be during the draft, though, if the Bills want them again for 28 and a fourth round pick. T. Higgins, he's right there with Brandon Ayuk. Same situation with Jamar Chase on his very own team. The difference is Ayuk hasn't requested a trade yet. He might, but T. Higgins has actually requested a trade. And I said there's no way the Bengals trade T. Higgins, or there's no way the 49ers trade Brandon Ayuk. Well, I said there was no way the Bills traded Stefon Diggs, and look what they did. The Bills traded Stefon Diggs, so look at them go. This can happen really at any time in the NFL these days, and teams are more willing to eat dead cap hits, as evidenced by the $31 million the Bills are eating. So, again, A for the Texans, C for the Bills. I can see pros and cons, but mainly they're just over the drama and his Twitter's antics. You know, call it that and whatever. But now I want to address kind of all these talk shows saying, well, the Bills window is closed, the Bills window is this, the Bills window that. First of all, I never agree with window anything. I never agree with, I've said this before, but Super Bowl bust. There are 32 teams in the NFL, people. Only only one of them goes away happy at the end of the year. 31 of them got to recalibrate and retool for next year and move on. 31 of them go home very sad and very disappointed and angry at themselves and whatever, because they didn't win the Super Bowl. Do you know how hard winning a Super Bowl in the NFL is? So there's no such thing as Super Bowl or bust. And as long as the Bills have Josh Allen, their Super Bowl window, maybe not wide open, but it's open. And teams do this. You have to go through life cycles of teams. You can't be afraid for change. The Bills have been at this thing for 4 years now of like elite Josh Allen play, elite team play, like four playoff wins in a row, 4 division titles, 4 AFC East titles in a row. They've been at this thing for 4 straight years. They've been so close, but couldn't get over the hill, if you will. So I'm going to use an analogy here, but it's time to change your tires instead of having your tires keep spinning over and over and over in the same place. And they've moved on from players and they've gotten younger and cheaper. And ever since November, December, I was really going into the offseason. That was my mantra for the Bills. And they did it. Younger and cheaper. Hoyer out. I mean, I already mentioned all those guys that are out. Hyde hasn't announced retiring yet, but predictably, I think he will. So I don't think the Bills' window is closed. I mean, people are dramatically overreacting to this. Like, they're saying the Bills are a fringe playoff team. Like, they're even going that far down. Like, don't listen to people who say that. They're like, I'm sorry, but they're like uneducated if they say that, because like what I can't comprehend that. Like, they're one of only 2 teams in the NFL, other than the Chiefs, the Bills and Chiefs are. So the Bills are one of only 2 teams in the NFL to win a playoff game in each of the last 4 seasons. They've won the AFC East. They've won the division crown, won a divisional title for 4 straight years now, 4 straight seasons now. I don't understand. Like, they've been right there. So they've only lost to Patrick Mahomes. What? That's your thing? Well, they've lost to Patrick Mahomes, so clearly the window's closed. Everyone loses to Patrick Mahomes. Everybody. There's very few teams that have actually beat Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, let alone the playoffs in high-stakes situations. So I'm sorry, but like I get frustrated too. I like cry when the season ends. I like get sad when the season ends and heartbreaking. 13 seconds was without a doubt the worst night of my entire life. But like, let's calm down and put this in perspective. It's not like we, the Bills, it's not like we're trash all of a sudden. It's not like we're losers all of a sudden. Teams would kill to have our weapons. I mean, let's face it, the Bills' offense is better than the Chiefs' offense last year. The Chiefs had Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, who heated up towards the middle of the season, mind you, and that was it. The Bills still have James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, added Curtis Samuel. I like Mac Hollins, and most likely a high-end first-round receiver if you stick and pick at 28 or move up into the teens or move up to 9. And probably maybe even trade Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins. We're not losers. We're not trash all of a sudden. Like, team would kill for our weapons. We still have weapons. And I cannot wait for Dalton Kincaid to get 100-plus targets, maybe even push 150. I cannot wait for Khalil Shakir to emerge as our main slot guy. Curtis Samuel, probably a returner with the new rules, and just as a gadget guy. But, like, I can't wait for that speed for our offense. Like, this isn't some like doomsday situation. Yes, Diggs was a huge part of our offense. And I've been talking about this on Twitter over the last couple of days since it happened. We're not done. Like, people that say that don't even pay no mind to them, pay no attention to them, because they don't know what they're talking about. What? They point to, oh, well, the Bills are cap strapped. They're cash strapped because they got to pay $31 million dead cap. Oh, okay. Next year, they cleared $27 million with Diggs. Like, as long as you get through this year, whatever. They saw the writing on the wall. They saw drama. They saw all the decline in production. I will never understand the declining in production. I will never understand why he was so dramatic about wanting to leave Buffalo. I will never understand why he, like, wanted out. I just don't get it. So, but yeah, that's kind of my take on it. Like, just people are overreacting to this. So, I don't know. But anyway, On a more positive note, before I get out of here today, it is the month of April. Like I just said at the beginning of this episode, the draft is 3 months from today. Cannot wait. Draft night is like football Christmas for me. It's probably is my favorite day of the year. Although waiting for all day kind of sucks because it's the clock just keeps ticking and ticking. You got a countdown of the draft and it takes forever. It feels like the day goes very slowly. But I'm gonna do a 7-round mock draft for the Bills. Now they had 11 picks. Now they got 10 picks this year. Every episode, so every week before at the end of every episode, I'm going to give you guys a 7-round mock draft for the Bills, and I would love to be engaged. Reach out to me on Twitter or comment in the comments below, or send me a message on Spotify. I think you can do the Q&A segments now on Spotify. So yeah, I'd love to engage with you guys on this 7-round mock draft every week. But to kick it off in round 1 at pick 28, again, no trade ups. I have the Bills going in round 1, pick 28, A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver, Texas. I think he's a contested catch machine. I think he's an okay route runner. Like, I don't think he's polished, but I know he has some effort issues. And I know he kind of just cuts off routes, and like if he doesn't get the ball, he gets all mad and sometimes, and he just stops running sometimes, and effort issues and lack of effort but he's a red zone monster. He had like 9 touchdowns and a touchdown like 8 straight games at Texas this past year. And that was an offense with Jonathan Brooks and CJ Baxter running back. Xavier Worthy at wide receiver 2 next to him. Jatavion Sanders at tight end. You got dudes there. But he still had 9 touchdowns, and his ball skills that extends to the red zone especially is immaculate. So I'm taking A.D. Mitchell. In round 2, pick 60. We are going Chris Jenkins, defensive tackle, Michigan. I like Ed Oliver. I love Ed Oliver, which I didn't just 2 years ago, but now I love Ed Oliver at 3 tech. Daquan Jones is a big run stopper at 1 tech. Austin Johnson has his direct backup from the Chargers and a handful of other teams. And Deshaun Williams is like a 5th /practice squad guy at best, and Eli Anku's a practice squad caliber. My point is, you need another body here and a high-end impact guy to back up Ed Oliver because you know how much they rotate. So I'm taking Chris Jenkins, defensive tackle, Michigan. No round 3 picks. So round 4, pick 128 overall. I'm taking Brendan Rice, wide receiver USC. I think this would be a cool story just for the bloodlines. His father is Jerry Rice, arguably the best wide receiver in NFL history, between him, Terrell Owens, Randy Moss. So I'm taking Brendan Rice. I think in the first 3 or 4 rounds, you got to double up. You got to double dip at receiver. So after I took A.D. Mitchell round 1, I'm taking Brendan Rice here in round 4. Next, our second of 2 4th-round picks. Round 4, pick 133. I'm going Jonah Ellis, edge, Utah. I don't think he'll be here. I think he could even sneak into the second round just because I'm kind of lukewarm in that edge class. Like, I love Dallas Turner. I love Jared Verse. And I like Latu. But after that, I'm not in love with Chop Robinson. I'm not in love with any of them others, really. I mean, Jonah Ellis is kind of a sleeper, in my opinion. So I think Jonah Ellis would be perfect. Because other than Greg Rousseau and AJ Podesta, I don't know what to expect. Like Von Miller, what to expect there. Kingsley Jonathan, 5th, 6th defensive end at best. Shaq Lawson, I still expect him to be back in like May or June before mandatory OTAs and training camp start, but they haven't re-signed him yet. So, yeah, Jonah Ellis. Round 5, pick 144. Keaton Oladapo, safety, Oregon State. This was really good value. Taylor Rapp's decent, I guess. This is kind of my hot take, if you will. The whole offseason I've been talking about it. I'm not the biggest fan of Taylor Rapp. It seems that the general Buffalo Bills fans, Bills Mafia consensus out there. Honestly, I like Cam Lewis more. And Mike Edwards was good low floor signing, but not a high athletic profile and ceiling. So infuse Keaton Oladapo in there round 5. We have 3 5th-round picks. So the second of 3. Round 5, pick 160 overall. I have the Bills taking Drake Nugent, center, Michigan. I think this is amazing value here as well because Connor McGovern's going to slide over to center. And then David Edwards will slide in from the bench as a utility offensive lineman to be an actual starting left guard. And, you don't really have much depth at center. I mean, Will Clapp, like, that's like depth reserve. I don't even know what to call it. And so you need Drake Nugent, direct backup to Connor McGovern. If that doesn't work out, Connor McGovern can go back to left guard. Dave Edwards can go back to the bench. And I'm not rooting for it to not work out, by the way. I hope it does, but Drake Nugent is insurance. Last of 3 fifth-round picks. Round 5, pick 163. When I saw this guy still on the board, I couldn't pass him up. Marshawn Lloyd, running back out of USC. I don't know how Marshawn Lloyd is still even here. Some people have him like a top 3, 4, top 5 back at the very least, at the highest in this class. So I don't know how he's still here. And then round 6, pick 200. Gabriel Murphy, edge, UCLA. I think he's another sleeper in the class. Getting Jonah Ellis in round 4, and then Gabriel Murphy. I know he didn't get as much attention because Latu was opposite him at UCLA with pass rush moves and spin moves galore, but like very refined and polished prospect. Like Gabriel Murphy, I think, is a sleeper. And then our second of 2 6th-round picks, and a lot of day 3, we have 2 4th-round picks, 3 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks. So an abundance of day 3 picks. Round 6, pick 204 overall. Nehemiah Pritchett, corner, Auburn. He can be great on special teams. Your top 3 outside corner. I'm not including Taron Johnson. I absolutely freaking love Taron Johnson, but I'm not including Taron right now because he's a slash nickel corner. So strictly outside corner, you have Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas, Nehemiah Pritchett. I don't think you need to draft corner in the first 4 rounds at all. Like I know, like Mel Kiper a couple weeks ago had us taking TJ Tampa, cornerback at Iowa State in the first round. First of all, I don't think he's a first round player. It's probably mid second round, right in the sweet spot there. But in terms of value, but people need to respect Christian Benford as this CB1. I think he'll be looked at as a borderline elite player, borderline elite shutdown corner at the end of next season. So Nehemiah Pritchett. And then round 7, pick 248. I double dipped at running back. And this guy, I think, like can contribute right away. Rasheen Ali, running back Marshall. And in that projected running back room, I really like how that shapes up. You have James Cook, Rasheen Ali, Marshawn Lloyd, and Ty Johnson. I think Ali would be great for the practice squad, although I would fear him getting plucked. But maybe my next 7, so there's my 7-round mock, all 10 picks, but maybe post Stefon Diggs trade. But maybe my next mock, I go through a late day 3 quarterback. I'm a fan of doing that still. Maybe I go for another offensive lineman or 2, specifically tackle or guard, since we got Drake Nugent here, starting out of Michigan, this simulation. Anyways, guys, this is kind of just a layback episode of my initial thoughts on the Stefon Diggs trade, the pros, the cons, briefly looking at it from a Texans perspective, deeply going in depth on a Bills perspective, what it means moving forward for the wide receiver room, what it means for Josh Allen moving forward, what led to this, what built to this, the drama. Did he request the trade? Did he not? All that. I broke it all down. Next week, it'll be a much more structured episode because what I had planned for today will be moved back to next week. I'm going to go through every target, just assuming any scenario where they don't trade up, every target the Bills could target of positions of need at round 1, at pick 28. And I can't wait for that. Strengths, weaknesses, pros, cons of all these prospects. Favorite time of the year, man. So anyway, I will see you guys next time. Thank you. Oh, gotta do some plugs before I get out of here. I almost forgot. You can follow me on Twitter, not just the Bills. I love engaging with you guys, and I love kind of getting into debates with people, not like me in debates or anything. But I love getting into debates with people about like, this situation that just happened or this. So you can follow me personally on Twitter at AWagner13. Instant reactions to everything Bills, especially Bills, but NFL in general. You can follow the podcast, or you can follow the show on Twitter at Around Slice. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Around the Slice and support the show for only $3 a month. And I have a TikTok. I don't use it much, but I guess it's Around the Slice as well. So anyways, guys, thank you for checking out this episode. And I'll be back next week to go in depth on draft prospects from a Bills pick 28 round 1 perspective, with the draft officially 3 weeks away from today. See you next week.